This is Will Tchakirides interviewing Tony Clomax for the HBCU Radio Preservation Project. It is about 11:15 a.m. on Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. This interview is being recorded at KPVU's podcast studios at Prairie View A&M University in Prairie View, Texas. All right, thanks for joining me today, Tony.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start here, taking it back. Well, actually, first, give us your full name, full birth name, and where and when you were born.
Well, my full name is Tony Sherrod Clomax. I was born in Chicago, Illinois. You need to know the date.
Only if you're comfortable.
I'm vintage.
What is your relationship to KPVU?
Well, KPVU.
Or your title?
Well, my title is I'm an assistant professor. I'm the director of film and television. I run KPVU TV. I'm the activity director of the Title III KPVU grant, which oversees the renovation of the KPVU radio space and developing the audio program, which is in relation to us building our radio, television, film program.
Awesome. And we'll get back to that that work that you're doing here. Let's take it back to Chicago, though. I want to know, in those vintage days, what was the place you grew up in? Describe what it felt like, what you saw around you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Chicago at that time.
Okay, well, my early days in Chicago were, I guess you can say, in the 70s. I grew up with my siblings who were older than me. My older sister, Deborah, my brother, John, and my sister, Linda, and then my mom. And so we lived on the south side of Chicago. And, a very, very loving family. And I guess you could say, like, in Chicago, especially back during that time, you knew your neighbors, okay? And so if, let's say, I did something wrong, I remember one time, I think I was 6 years old, and I crossed the street. I crossed Vincennes. And Vincennes is an extremely busy street. And I crossed the street, and I remember this neighbor named Barbara. And she grabbed me, and she whooped me. And then so when my mom got home, she told my mother, and then my mother gave me a spanking. So I got like a double spanking. So that's how, like Chicago was. But I think also that was the time. And so that's like kind of what I remember. Chicago, it was hot. Summer times, extremely hot. Winter times, extremely cold. And so, good times, but also challenging times. I remember, you did have gangs. And so let's just say, in high school, I ran track and I played football. And the reason why I became fast is because of my interactions with the gangs. Because my mother told me, don't fight. And so I had to run. And I became fast. But it got to a point where I got tired of running. So I remember actually stopping and fighting. And I fought, and I didn't have to fight again because I took care of that guy. And so it was the time when I just decided that I wasn't going to deal with any bullies or anything like that. And so it kind of like made me who I became. I always had a chip on my shoulder. I had to fight for what was right, stand up to bullies and things like that. And so, Chicago made me who I am.
Thanks for that. And can you tell me a little bit about your mom and a little bit more about the people who raised you, maybe those older siblings as well?
Well, so my my mom, she she got married very, I can't say very young. She got married when she was, I guess you could say 19, 20. It was almost like an arranged marriage. And so she had three, kids with her husband. And then they lived in D.C. and then she decided to leave that marriage. It wasn't good for her. And then moved back to Chicago. And then that's when she, met my father and fell in love for the first time. And that did not work out. Okay, so, but she had me. And so I guess you can say that, I was a love child. And so she used to refer to me as her bonus baby. And so it was like my siblings prayed for me, and so they all poured into me, love and everything like that. So, my mother had to work and everything like that, so my siblings had to look after me. And so, I guess you can say you could say I'm an old soul because I was around older people a lot, especially like my grandmother and my great grandmother. So I was around older people all the time, and I talked to them a lot.
Speaking of talking to them, would you tell me where they came from? Where do your people come from before they got to Chicago? Trace it back.
So my mother was born in New Orleans. My grandmother was born in Mississippi, and I think my great grandmother, she was born in Mississippi as well. And so I tried to trace my family back as far as I could. And all I know is that my great-grandmother's parents, her mother name was Mississippi, and her husband was much older than her. And he was actually born, believe it or not, he was born a slave. And I think he was born maybe 1862. So that's how, that's not long ago. Mm-hmm. That I can look back. And so I was in conversations with my great grandmother Nan. Her name was Dorothy Small, but we call her Nan. I talked to my great grandmother whose father was a slave, and so I got to have her up until I was 8 years old. And so, but then, with my grandmother, she lived to, 92. And so I spent a lot of time with her. And then, and I'm not trying to get emotional or anything, but I had my mom till 90. She passed in October. And so I got to interview my mother for 2 years. So I have 12 hours of interviews with my mom.
Wow.
Telling me about her life.
It's really fortunate.
Yeah. So I'm so thankful for that. And so I'm looking forward to tackling that.
And when you were growing up in the 70s, would you travel back to the South often? With family?
Not really. My mother took me. So here's an interesting thing. So my mother took me to New Orleans when I was 6, and we spent 2 weeks there, and we stayed with her father. and her father lived with his brother and sister-in-law, Aunt Beulah and Uncle Dewey. And it was the worst experience of my life. I had to wake up at 6 a.m., take a bath. I got to play outside. At noon, I got to eat lunch, but I had to take a bath before I ate lunch. And then I can go back outside and play. And then for dinner, I had to come in, take another bath, and then I could eat. And then I had to get ready for bed at 8 o'clock. So Aunt Beulah had me on a schedule like I was some longshoreman or construction worker in the summertime, and I'm 6 years old. I hated it. I wanted out of there. And so, and the funny thing about it, my grandfather, the guy did not like me. And I couldn't understand why this guy did not like me. And long story short, he was not my mother's biological father. But he loved my mother. So my grandmother, he couldn't have children. And so when he married my grandmother, she was already pregnant. And she was pregnant with, I think, a guy who worked at the shipyards in Baton Rouge. And he may have been Panamanian or he may have been Jamaican who spoke Spanish. I don't know. I tried to get it out of her. She just held it. And so, but it wasn't until he passed that his brother, I'm sorry, that was his sister. Aunt Beulah was his sister. His brother, Robert Duclay, they were Creole. Robert Duclay told my mother once he passed that he wasn't her biological father. And I already knew that. I knew it deep down inside. And then my mother, I asked her how did she feel about it, and she said, she heard rumors and it confirmed, and but he loved her. Like, he loved my mother. And he loved my grandmother, but they had this love-hate relationship. And he loved my sisters. So he loved dark-skinned women, but he didn't like my brother and I because we were dark-skinned, and we reminded him of the man that, was the guy my grandmother was with. So that was it. Like, that was my experience. And then, I think when I was 8, my mother was flirting with us moving to New Orleans. And she sent my sister Dubber down there to scout. The only good thing about that, my sister met her husband. And luckily we didn't move, but she came back with a husband.
Now, in Chicago, what neighborhood did you come up in?
Oh, boy. On the south side, I lived in the, lived in the South Shore area. Okay. But grew up further south on 95th and Clyde in the Manor. And then, I went to college and everything. And then once I came back home, we left the Manor and moved to the south, back to the South Shore area. My brother bought my mother this big brownstone. He always said, "Mom, I'm gonna buy you a house." And my brother used to work on Wall Street, and so he was a big trader, and then just big in business and stuff. But he ended up buying this big brownstone on Lakeshore Drive, South Shore Drive. And so we moved. This is in the 90s, and then we moved. But then I left and went to grad school at Michigan State. So I would come back and stuff, and then I moved to New York with my brother and stuff, but they lived in that house for, about, little over 20 years.
Okay. So before we get there, though, in the 70s and 80s, Chicago, you mentioned gang activity and fight or flight instinct, but what did you find joy in coming up in Chicago? And if you can connect that, such an eclectic music scene that's happening in Chicago as well at that time.
Oh,
what did you find? What did you find joy in? How did you find pleasure? And what was cool to you in Chicago coming up?
well, for me, what did I enjoy about Chicago? Chicago, it was my friends. When we moved in 1980, like literally my two best friends that I met in 1980 are my best friends right now.
That's great.
And one of them graduated from PV.
Is that how you first heard about PV, Prairie View?
Yeah.
Okay.
He cannot believe that I am teaching at PV. And so when he comes for homecoming, he stays with me.
Mm.
So the music scene, it's from what I remember, house music.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand, too, because of my siblings being older. So I learned about the blues, Chicago blues, from like Chicago blues, Motown, from my mother. I learned about jazz from my grandmother. I learned about rock music, heavy rock, classic rock from my brother. I learned about, I would say, funk, and disco from my sister Deborah. Pop, Prince, anything like that from my sister Linda. And then just anything else I just learned from discovery, just listening to the radio, movies. And so as a child, I used to pretend that I had a radio station.
Oh, please elaborate on that.
So I would basically, if I would listen to a radio station and I had a tape cassette, and if I heard a song that I liked, I would record it. And so once I would record songs, and then I had a list of songs, I would pretend like, hey, this is Tony, such and such, blah, blah, blah. And now we're going to listen to I'm a Believer by the Monkees. And I will play that song. And so that's what I used to do. So I had a very eclectic taste in music. So I discovered music that my siblings and my mother, they didn't even listen to.
Well, yeah. What did you show them? They taught you so much about.
Well, I didn't show them anything. I just had that. I just had that taste, But I was into film. I discovered film, and that was my love. So basically, I'll tell you this. This is before cable and everything like that. I'm watching television, and it was, movie of the week. And so that week, it was Clint Eastwood week. And so at the opening credits, it says, directed by Clint Eastwood. I'm like, oh, okay. I see that. And now I'm seeing, wow, like I'm seeing a lot of directed by Clint Eastwood. I'm like, but he's the actor. The following week is Sidney Poitier week. And I'm like, okay, I love Sidney Poitier. I'm watching this film, Buck and the Preacher, directed by Sidney Poitier. I'm like, wow, okay. And then Uptown Saturday Night, directed by Let's do it again. Directed by Piece of the Action. Directed by Stir Crazy. Well, not Stir Crazy. There was another film that he was in that he directed. And I said, wait a minute. So my mother had these encyclopedias that she got me. So I go to the encyclopedia. I'm like, what's directed? What's it? And I looked and I said, I'm going to become a director. And years later, I got to tell, I went to film school and everything, and I'm in the audience, and we're in a Q&A, and this was after watching Invictus that Clint Eastwood directed. So it was Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, and Matt Damon, on stage. I got to ask the first question, and I got to ask Clint Eastwood the question. But before I got to ask him that question, I got to tell him I became a filmmaker because of him and Sidney Poitier. And then I asked my question, but then before he answered the question, he was like, well, thank you, and you put me in a great, a great group to say that you became a filmmaker because of me and Sidney Poitier. And then he went on to answer my question, but he spent like 15 minutes answering my question, him and Matt Damon. And that was like one of the highlights of my life. And I thought that I was going to be able to tell Sidney Poitier the same thing before he passed away. But, but it was, I became a filmmaker because of those two guys.
So direction, it's creativity, it's a vision, as I've heard you explain before. So where in your life or who in your life, where does that creative drive come from?
Well, I mean, like I said, they planted the seed. Movies were like my babysitter. Like just watching movies, and just my imagination going places, playing with action figures, watching Sesame Street, watching Mr. Rogers, watching Electric Company and Zoom, and watching all these different shows that, this is PBS, which they want to take away, which is crazy. But those shows, it stimulated my mind and just planted all these different seeds and just made me dream and it just made me exercise my mind. So, and then my mother always just stand on me about like writing and reading. And so even before going to film school or anything like that, I was always writing little stories, right? Just writing stories and like, okay, I'm going to write this story and then I want this action figure to do that. I was writing scripts and making movies before I even knew what I was doing. And so then getting to the point where I was like, man, I can do this. All I can say is I don't know what I would do if I couldn't create. Like, that's my passion. Like, that is my passion. I live, sleep, eat, breathe creativity. I have to do that. And so, when I was recruited to come here to help build the film program, I was just like, well, I can't do that. No, I'm a filmmaker. I'm going to L.A. I was leaving New York to go to L.A. Like, no, come in. The chairperson at the time, I gotta say, she kind of lied to get me here, but it's okay. And but I came, and the only way that I can do what I do is the fact that I still make films. I still write. I tell the students this, like, you're being taught by somebody that still do what they're teaching. I still have work in film festivals. I'm still winning stuff, and you should appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. So, who were those mentors for you when you were coming up? Was there anyone in particular who helped nurture that creativity?
Sadly, I've never had a mentor.
So it's all self-driven as you see it.
I've never had a mentor in sports, in football. I've never had a mentor in film. It's always been, and it goes back to Chicago and dealing with bullies. I had to deal with bullies in the streets. I had to deal with bullies in Chicago public schools, dealing with racism, racist teachers.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit, what you experienced in school?
Oh, boy. So, I would say from kindergarten all the way up to fourth grade, just being targeted, isolated, made fun of because of like my dark skin, just things like that. And or just having a difference of opinion, just expressing myself, going against the grain. And I remember I was being creative. And this teacher, Miss Manson, and if she was related to Charles Manson, I wouldn't be surprised. I was being creative, and she got so upset that I was doing something different. She snatched up my paper that I had glue on, and she smacked it on my forehead. And I had a little afro, and the glue was stuck in my hair, and people were laughing. The kids were laughing and everything like that. And so because I couldn't see it, I could just feel it. I was so embarrassed. So I kind of like twist the glue, and I took my little scissors and I cut the glue out, and then I had a little hole in my little fro. And things like that. And she would just kick me out of class and send me to the principal office. And I remember this principal, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Anderson. Now, Mr. Anderson was interesting because Mr. Anderson was this light-skinned black guy, and this guy hated me. And I'm like, why does this guy hate me so much? And I couldn't understand why he hated me so much. And my mother would have to come up to school, and it got to the point where she couldn't leave work. So my grandmother came, and it all made sense. This guy knew my family. This guy knew my grandmother. So my family used to be in the Nation of Islam, and that guy used to be in the Nation of Islam. That guy was targeting me because of his issues with my grandmother. And when my grandmother saw him, oh boy, she took care of him. And from that day on, he never bothered me again. Then I had an issue with a gym teacher who looked like Chuck Norris. And this guy used to bully me in class. Why? Because I said Sugar Ray Leonard was going to beat Roberto Duran. And he didn't like that. And then he was like, well, such and such, blah, blah, blah. And he punched me in my stomach. And I knocked the wind out of me. Kids are laughing. And this is fourth grade. Mm-hmm. I think fourth grade. And I was embarrassed. I cried. And my brother happened to be in town. My brother used to be the heavyweight champion in Taekwondo. My brother was supposed to be was the captain of the U.S. team, but we boycotted the '80 Olympics, missed this opportunity. My brother came up to school. All I know is that my brother and that gym teacher went into the office, and I sat there outside the door and I watched, and my brother did something and they did, and all I know is when they came out, that gym teacher could not hold his hands up right. From that point on, for the last 3 months of school, I was made captain of every event in gym class. And then we moved. And my mother put me in private school after that. So for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I was in private school. And then got into Whitney Young, one of the top high schools in the country. And so periodically I would tell my mother, I said, Mama, you know what? You saved my life. I told her that. I said, you saved my life.
It's okay.
Because if I had stayed in public school, I would have either dropped out, I would have either gotten into a gang to survive, or I would have ended up dead because I would have either taken a weapon to school to defend myself. Because that's how bad it was getting. Because it was either the teachers or the administrators. Mm-hmm. It was somebody. But it was just a matter of time because it was going to happen.
She got you out.
She got me out. And I said, Mom, how did you afford that? How did you afford that? I had a very interesting relationship with my father.
Talk about that a little bit.
Okay? And I felt like he never gave me anything. Right? Never gave me anything. And I said, how did you afford that? And she said, she went to him and she said, listen, Tony's got to get out of public school and I'm going to put him in this private school. And if you don't do anything for him, this is what you can at least do. I never knew that. She told me this while I was interviewed. This is one of our last interviews. She told me this. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. So he paid for the, private school. And I was like, wow. Well, that's the least he could do.
Okay, I was going to say, what did it feel like to learn that in that moment?
Anything
else?
It's the least he could do.
Yeah.
And so it was, and I had stopped talking to him. And when my brother passed in 2020 from COVID, I decided to do the 21 days of meditation. And day 17, I said, I was supposed to forgive somebody, write a letter and forgive somebody. And then so I said, I'm going to forgive him. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to call him. And so when I called him, his phone was disconnected. It's like, that's weird. And then something hit me. So I Googled his name, and he had died that day 1 year ago.
Wow.
So it was like a double whammy because my brother had just passed, less than, I think it was like 25 days prior. So it was, and even though I had like ill feelings towards him, it was still a loss because I kind of had stuff to say to him. I'd said stuff to him, but and the reason I had stopped talking to him because his brother, his last surviving brother, wanted a relationship with me, and he was keeping us apart because his brother wanted me to connect with him and his son and his wife because they had retired and moved to L.A. because these were the last two siblings of 18. And he denied me that. And now they all dead.
Wow.
So.
Well, I'm sorry for your recent losses.
Yeah.
You offered a couple threads there that I do want to pull onto. You mentioned the Nation of Islam. Do you recall about when your family left the nation and sort of, I'm interested in sort of the community institutions when you're growing up that, provided strength, provided solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
Well, so my great grandmother Nan, she was her and her husband were the first to get into the nation, and I think that was in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how my mother got in. And they were taking care of my mother because my grandmother had left my mother with them, and she had gone out to California because she was in love with some guy. My grandmother lived an interesting life. She was out there selling insurance, and her early years, she was kind of like a grifter and all that stuff. I'm writing a script about my grandmother. So that's how my mother got into the nation. And then when my grandmother came back to Chicago, then that's how she got in. So they were in the nation, and then my mom was growing up, and then she said that when she was a junior in high school at Inglewood High School, the decision was made for her to leave Inglewood High School and go to the Islam school. And she went there, and I think she told me that she kind of regretted that because she really wanted to go to college. Because she heard people talking about it, and she kind of wanted to go to college, and she didn't. Because schools didn't recognize that. And so Small Papa, that was her grandfather. It wasn't her biological grandfather, but that was my grandmother's husband. It was Small Papa. He said, you got to get some type of education. So he paid for her to go to business school. And so she got 1 year of office type stuff. So she learned how to type. She learned, all the office type stuff that you would do, and that allowed her to get like some really good jobs and stuff. So, but that's what she was doing, and they were all in the nation, and that's when she ended up meeting my sibling's father, who was in town from D.C., at some type of conference, and he was part of the Fruit of Islam,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like the security guy. So he was big time guy, good looking guy, tall like my brother ended up being, and you know, they just thought that, hey, this is the type of guy you want to marry and stuff. My mother was like, she told me, she's like, look, I'm working, you know, I got a good life here, and they're just like, no, you need to be married. You know, it's the 50s. You need to be married. And she felt the pressure. And so, you know, she was like, and everybody was saying, well, look, he's tall, dark, and handsome. he's got status and stuff, and that's what she did. So she had this life in DC, but because she had that work experience, she was able to get this government job, and she took a test, and she got this higher ranking. So she was actually working. I forgot what it was called, but she had a really good job.
Civil service job.
Yeah, she had a really good job, and he drove a cab. And she learned really quick that he was not motivated. And that was that caused a lot of problems.
And was that the spark of her stepping away from the nation eventually? Or?
Stepping away from him.
From him, of course, yes. But
and so it wasn't until Malcolm X being killed that caused a lot of issues, and then the battle of control between Elijah Muhammad's son and Louis Farrakhan. Battle. And so when I remember that my grandmother used to take me, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going, and I'm just remember being in this place, bored, sitting there. But I just remember, okay, I just gotta hang tough, because after this, we're gonna go to the park, and we're gonna buy some food, and we're gonna eat. I'm gonna have a good time with my grandmother, and she's gonna take me home. I just got to get through this, just like any kid would. But I just remember I think by 4, it was just this battle. They lost everything. Everything that they built, they lost it. It was chaos, and that's when they left.
that mosque.
Yeah, they just left, and then that's when Farrakhan came back, and you know, out of exile or whatever, he came back, took over, bought everything back, and built it up and stuff. But by that time, they weren't in the nation anymore. So I didn't grow up in it.
Is spirituality a part of your life?
Yeah. So my family still were like practicing Muslims. Now my brother was never part of the nation, but he was practicing Muslim, but not part of the nation. Me, I can't say I was ever Muslim. When my mother put me in private school, she sent me to Fellowship Christian Academy. She asked me, where do you want to go? You can either go Fellowship Christian Academy, or you can go to this Catholic school. Fellowship Christian Academy was right down the street from home. Their uniforms are green and gold. I could take the bus and go to this other school, and their colors was something else. I looked. I said, I just want to be closer to home, and that's where I chose. So I used to bump heads with Mr. Owens. He taught history, religion, and something else. And I was the Bible champion, and we bumped heads because he was trying to ram Christianity down my throat with a bunch of lies. And I challenged him. And he got uncomfortable. And we would just battle. And this is in 8th grade. And we would battle and battle and battle. And to the point where he couldn't defend himself. And he got mad. And he kicked me out of class. And Miss Millay, the principal, she said, and Miss Millay, she built that school. Miss Millay was 94 years old. And she said, and this was the last 2 months of school, she said, during religion, during history, and then during, I forgot what other class he taught, you come to me. And so she taught me all his subjects, one-on-one. And I was like, okay. And because she was brilliant. And she taught me. And then when it was time for me to take the school for high school, right? I think there were like 16 exams. I think it was 16, either 16 or 22 exams. On, I want to say 12 exams, my score was post-high school. And I owe that to her, of just preparing me, just me sitting with her. And so it also prepared me, so when it was time to take the test for Whitney Young, I aced that thing. I aced that. And so, to go to Whitney Young High School, which was not only the top high school in the city, it's one of the top high schools in the country. Like, I've arrived.
I'm gonna count that as mentorship. she might have
well,
been
you
your
know
mentor.
what? And you know what? I gotta say something. It's funny that you say that. I'm gonna take when you said that, because Miss Millay, I used to go to her house and cut her grass. I would cut her grass. Yep. I used to go to her house and I would cut her grass once a week. And I remember after I cut her grass, I would sit on the porch with her and we may talk for maybe like a half an hour to an hour. Honestly, I can't even remember what we talked about. But that might be the reason why she said, you know what? Come to me instead of dealing with him. Maybe it is. And I got to say, that was probably a mentor.
Yeah. Okay, so you're learning a lot. Survival, resiliency, do for self, self-empowerment. I want to take this to the world of HBCUs, and I want to know, what went into your decision making for college. I know you attend Hampton University, right? But Hampton, that's a world and unto its own. What you learned coming up in Chicago? How did it help you when you made that choice to attend Hampton? What transferred over?
So my motto is, and it's funny, as I'm telling you all of this, how Miss Millay prepared me to take these exams, and those exams got me into Whitney Young. I'm at Whitney Young, and while at Whitney Young, there were 7 of my former classmates at Hampton. And when they came back, that's all they talked about. No, Hampton is so great. Hampton is so great. But then there were also some of my former classmates at Florida A&M saying, Florida A&M, so great, so great. And then there were some of my classmates that said, Howard is so great. So I had these 3 group of classmates that were, they were seniors when I was a junior. And, coming back saying how great these schools were. And I said, okay, I'm going to apply to those 3 schools.
Did you visit all of them?
I didn't visit any of them. I didn't visit any school. I didn't go with what money?
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, what? I didn't visit one school. I just applied. Also, I played football. But my senior year, we had a public school strike.
Wow.
And so we didn't play our first football game until the end of September. And it ruined our football season. And so, it was a mess. So the way I looked at it, I saw this guy, Carl Painter, who played at Hampton. He got drafted by the Detroit Lions. And I was like, well, wait a minute. This guy got drafted. That means they need a running back. Hampton needs a running back. I said, you know what? This is so naive. It's like, I'm going to walk on to Hampton. Now, the only scholarship offers that I got was from Tennessee State, some junior colleges to come there, right? And that was it. That was it. And my best friend, my other best friend James, he was going to Tennessee State, and I was like, well, maybe. And I said, no, I don't want to go there. I'm going to go to Hampton. Oh, and it made it easier because I didn't have housing at FAM. There was no housing at Howard. I got accepted to all those schools, so I was like, I'm going to Hampton. And so I flew for the first time to New York. All right. Got with my brother. And my brother and I, we were bumping heads prior to that. We were bumping heads. Why? Because his little brother got his own opinions now. So we were bumping, my mother said, baby, can you take Tony to school? Can you take him to school? And he was like, okay. So she sent me, he sent me a ticket, and I got to New York, and we hung out, and then we were taking a train to Hampton, and so he got down there. And it's just so crazy because we had a blast. We just had a blast, and we reconnected and stuff. So when it was time for my brother to leave, he kept missing his train just so he can stay. And we were just hanging out. So when he's like, okay, I gotta go. So, he left, and I remember walking. Oh man, it hit me that I was by myself.
How did that feel?
Oh man, I started crying. I was like, I'm by myself. And I'm walking, and I'm crying, and then I had 2 other freshmen behind me, and they were like, Clomax. And these guys ended up being like my closest friends all through Hampton, and we're still tight now. But I just felt totally alone. But once I heard them call my name, it made me pep up and stuff. But that trip on that train and hanging out, that got my brother and I, close again and stuff. Mm. But when I got there, I had to be resilient. And I got treated like the bastard stepchild by the coaches because I was a walk-on. And I just stuck with it. first 2 years, I didn't even travel. And I just got angrier and angrier and angrier. And I had to play, I played scout team. And it got to the point where, I'm playing defense. And I'm playing defense so well that I'm just taking it. The defensive coach was like, Clomax, I want you come on over here. Come on over, play some safety over here. So you can play. You can come travel. And I'm like, no, I'm a running back. I'm a running back, coach. And I stuck with it. I started, playing special teams and traveling and stuff. And I got cocky because the first game my freshman year, I got in. I got in, and I got to run the ball 3 times. And I think I had like 45 yards. So I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I play it. I ain't run the ball again until, like years. But I ended up sticking with it, and I started my senior year. But my brother came in. I was upset, and my brother came in and told the coach, said, hey, I'm taking my brother out. He gonna go transfer. And they said, no, Clomax good. He all right. He good. And sadly, the reason why I got my opportunity, which is crazy, is because every time they recruited a guy to come in, he wasn't better than me, and they saw it, and they ended up moving that guy to defense. They ended up moving the guy to defense. They moved the guy to another position. But the guy that was there died. He died the summer. It was just strange. And because he died, it gave me an opportunity. And I ended up starting my senior year. But it taught me to stick with it.
You have to stay ready.
Stay ready. Don't quit. In the days now where you hop in the portal, you go and this and that. If that existed back then, I probably would have been out of there long before that, right? Long before that. But it taught me to be resilient. I mean, it just, everything that I've been through in life, it taught me to just be strong and to fight, to have character, to work hard, and to never give up and never quit.
And outside of football, I want you to paint a picture for me of what the campus at Hampton is like. What's the culture like at Hampton? Tell me about that.
Now, is it like that now? I don't know, but man, Hampton's campus, which we call the Yard, was alive. Like, you go outside, people are outside. You might have the Greeks in their little section, whatever. You got people laying out on the waterfront with their blankets, reading books, courting, guys throwing a football or frisbee. You got people hanging out. It's like alive. And you could just bump into somebody. You're hanging out. Depending on the building. So you have the Whipple Barn. They made Whipple Barn for the architect major. So they're in there. They're building stuff. And you could always catch them in there. You walk down, and I was a business major, and so you'll see people hanging out there. You go in there and get the computer lab. People like writing papers or doing whatever. You go down to the gym where I also would be for football or whatever. You have all the athletes down there. So we had a new library. People hanging out. So it was alive. But it's a beautiful campus. Now you go back now, the campus, new buildings, everything, it's gorgeous. But when I go back, it's homecoming. So it's tons of people there.
Yeah, tell me what homecoming's like at Hampton.
Now, here at PV, you have the RVs and, all of that. Hampton, it's just packed. It is packed. It's almost like Mardi Gras. It's just so many people walking everywhere, piled everywhere. You'll have some RVs and things like that, cars, but no matter where. Now, everybody knows. Everybody called me Clomax. That's just And then on football, we had our little call, yee. So you walking, somebody see you, you hear that call, yee. So it's a football player. But I hear my name call or whatever. I'm looking. So it's so many people. It's just so many people, and it's just a good feeling. Like you know what I'm saying. It's just such a great feeling. And then what's crazy is now you see your friends who got kids in college. And so yeah, it's just a warm feeling. It's a big party. This is great.
And how did Hampton nurture that creative side we were talking about earlier?
Now, so I had work study at Hampton in the speech communication theater arts department, and I was a finance major first. Why? Because of my brother. You got to go into finance because you got to make money, and we're gonna go into business. I'm like, after my first year and a half, I said, "Ben, I can't stay in finance. I can't do this. I want to be a filmmaker. I'm gonna go over into the media arts department. I'm gonna change my major." Went over there, talked to somebody, met this woman, and she told me that because I was a football player, that I wouldn't take the major serious, and because I was switching the major, I would have to be there for an extra year. She was just being so negative, and it was such a turn off. And I just remember telling her, I said, you know what? You're going to remember my name, and I'm never going to remember your name. And I just remember leaving that office, and I said, I went back to the business, and I said, I'm going to just change my major to marketing. And I can't even remember what that woman's name is. It just left a bad taste in my mouth. And so any opportunity that I got, where I remember my supervisor was like, "Oh, can you videotape the play?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I remember having this camcorder, and I was like, "I'm gonna keep this for the week." And I just remember going out and just filming stuff.
This is your first time directing.
I was filming stuff and just doing commentary, but it was comedy. And so I would be with my friends, and we'll film stuff, and it was like a man around town. So I would interview people, and I would ask them questions, and it was comedy. I was just doing comedy stuff. Or I would film from my dorm room, and so we'll film stuff, and I would do voiceover, like pretending what the conversation is, but why, and that's the stuff that I was doing. But I just felt so alive having that camera, and of course they were like, "Hey, you got that camcorder? We need that camcorder back." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm bringing it back." And so I didn't get to change my major, but that was like it planted the seeds, So I was just like, I gotta do this, but it took a long time to come full circle, but because of that experience of how that woman treated me, it caused me to go into like I went to graduate school and got a master's in the higher adult lifelong education program, focusing on student affairs and sports administration. And so I was just like, man, I don't want student athletes to ever have to go through that again. So that's why I ended up going to Northwestern University. I was working there in the athletic department as an academic advisor and career development coordinator. But it was like I was there for 4 years, and I was meeting with a student because the coaches love me to meet with their students to recruit them to come to Northwestern. And I remember meeting with a student, and after I talked to them, I closed my door and wrote my letter of resignation. I was like, I can't do this. I'm telling these kids to follow their dreams and this and that. Like, what about my dreams? Wrote my letter of resignation. And I was just like, I'm moving. I'm going to L.A. I'm about to go pursue my film stuff.
What year is this about?
This is 2000.
Okay.
It's like I'm out of here, and I was going to do the Teach for America program. I was like, I'm going to do that for 2 years, and then I'm going to go to do my MFA. I was going to go to L.A. I got accepted and everything, and my brother called, and he was like, man, why don't you come to New York? My business is I'm in South Korea. I need somebody to take care of the house, the dog. And I was like, I got plans. I got to do such and such, blah, blah, blah. I got to do such and such, blah, blah, blah. And he said, man, you can do that. You can do that in New York. You got NYU and this and that. Come on, I'll pay you. And he talked me into it. So I called. And Teach for America transferred me to New York. So I was going to teach 6th grade in Red Hook and put me in the hood of Brooklyn. Everything was set. However, I thought the training was going to be in New York like it was the previous year. Guess where the training was? In Houston. And I couldn't be in Houston because my brother had already left for South Korea. I was already in New York. I was taking care of the house. I was taking care of the dog. I couldn't leave. So I had to cancel. I couldn't do Teach for America. So I ended up just doing a certificate program at the New York Film Academy. And so basically for 8 weeks, I made 3 films. I shot on film, 16 millimeter. I edited on a table, and that was that. Like I was like, that's it. I'm here.
Love
and
it.
So, never look back.
Before we move too far away from it, do you recall Hampton's radio station by chance? Was it there, WHOV?
WHOV. So, WHOV was extremely important to me because now they played a lot of jazz. And then they got into playing, I think it was like some hip hop, showing you where they got the samples from or whatever, but it was the jazz. And that is how I really got into jazz. I kind of learned about it. I learned a little about jazz and country music from my grandmother. I really got into jazz, WHOV. And man, I just devoured it. And so it would be like there would be times when I wouldn't even go out or whatever, and I'm just in and
It's soundtrack to your work.
yeah, I would just be working. I could be writing. I could be sad, just whatever. And if I'm not listening to any of my tape cassettes, I'm like, man, I'm listening to WHOV, and it's just all this jazz, and I'm just learning about all the different musicians and the music and everything like that. And I'm like, man, and I just ate it up. I just ate it up. So
did you ever visit the station?
I saw it. I went over there, but I wasn't like in it like that. No.
Okay, so now you mentioned, eventually making your way to Northwestern for that position. You've mentioned going back to grad school. What did you do immediately after Hampton? Was it that job at Northwestern? Or was there
so Hampton?
And what happened with in football and that dream? I guess kind of dissipated.
So here's the thing. So I had another year of eligibility, and so the coaching staff got fired. All right, and I had led the team in rushing. I led the team in scoring, and rushing TDs, because Johnny Barnes, who got drafted by the San Diego Chargers, he had caught 10 TD passes. I rushed for 10 TD rushed for 10 touchdowns. Coach Joe Taylor came in and took over, and I played spring ball, and so I had a great spring. I was an activist.
Say more.
And during that time, President Harvey, he was trying to silence the student body. He had brought in George Bush, and he was a known Republican, which was fine. And so he had brought in. It was a lot going on, and I used to write this underground newsletter, just pointing out just a lot of stuff. I'll just leave it at that.
But wait, an underground newsletter, kind of like a zine or like a political zine of sorts, or
I was pointing out all the things that was wrong that the school administration was doing,
mm-hmm.
things that I saw that was wrong.
You were critical of the world around you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Journalists do.
Yeah, of the campus. Yeah. Definitely of the campus, of the surrounding community. If I thought different groups on campus were being mistreated, I was pointing it out, and I felt that student athletes were being mistreated. And so there was a woman who had it out for some student athletes, and I was getting the blunt of that, and so I targeted her. And so I remember going in to have my meeting with Coach Taylor, and she was sitting right there. And my eyes were wide open, and I tried to play it cool, and she just went off. And she said, "This is the guy who's been writing these letters, writing this newsletter, and and he talked about me, and I just said, I don't know what she's talking about, Coach. I don't know what she's talking about. I just denied it, and she was attacking me, and he defended me, and he asked her to leave, and I thought everything was okay, and he said, son, you're a hell of a running back, and I could have used you, but I don't need no Malcolm X, and you're going to go off and do some great things. And you're gonna be successful in life, and this and that, but I can't have that right now. So I wish you well. I was crushed because his offense was perfect for me. I'm not taking anything away from the guy who ended up being the starter that year. He didn't even play running back. He played off linebacker. They moved him there. That guy, I think he rushed for like 1,400 yards and had like 20 touchdowns. I definitely would have got that and more. So that happened. And then another situation happened with a teacher. And I remember Dr. Askew, a finance teacher, went to this teacher. He was this Indian teacher who was my productions teacher. He failed me. And there was a racial component there. But I also gave him some ammunition because I felt like I was being unfairly treated, and I was mad. And I tell my students this story. I was mad, I was upset, and I had missed the class. So I decided I wasn't going to class for a week. And in that week, I missed a test. And that test caused me to fail the class. And so Dr. Askew went on my behalf saying, look, this guy has a job waiting for him in Chicago. And if he doesn't graduate, he's going to lose this job. And he said no. And I did lose that job. And I had to take that class at Chicago State in the summer. And that class was in the middle of the day. And I was in class from 2 to like 6 in the summer. I didn't even have a job. And I was so bitter. And I was bitter towards Hampton for years. I didn't go back. It wasn't until probably maybe, 2017 that I even went back. But I didn't march with my class. I got my diploma mailed to me and my degree mailed to me, and I was angry. But had I just gone to class, I would have taken the test and I would have passed the class. And I let this guy's racism, mistreatment, because he was only there to buy his time so he can go to Old Dominion. And I was so upset at myself about that. And so I missed out on a lot of opportunities. So I missed out, and I look at those two things that I did. I would have had a different life, but I asked myself, would I be the person that I am today if I didn't write that underground newsletter and played and came back, Well,
it's such a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Really, in your life, as I'm hearing this, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
What I do want to ask you out of that, I know that you advise the student newspaper here the Panther, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm bringing it back.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is, that experience of writing in an underground newspaper, other journalistic activities. What is your journalistic philosophy? How do you approach this kind of work?
You know what? You want to tell the truth. You want to be a person of integrity, and not have any bias, and just tell it like it is. And if you approach every story like that, you're gonna have credibility. People are gonna trust you, and they're gonna say, "Oh, you know what? I can read that person's story, or I can watch that person's report, or listen to that person, on a podcast or whatever, because of that person's reputation, and they know that they're just going to tell it like it is. They're not going to twist it. They're not going to lie or have an agenda. And just that's just how I approach it. And I'm going to, back up all my students for that, and go to bat for them and defend them and everything like that. But I'm also going to let them know that, hey, there's a cost that comes with that, and if you're not ready to pay that cost, then this may not be for you. You know what I'm saying? It may not be for you, and if this is not for you, you don't want to be that person that, oh well, you know what, I'm going to fudge this and play it safe because I don't want to. Because when you start doing that, then you're not going to have any credibility. Because then people can tell, oh, they're saying this. When you're seeing somebody on television, or you're listening to a story or whatever, that, oh, this person is leaning this way because of. You can tell. You can tell. So.
Now, I don't want to fast forward too much, but I do want to know, Tony, how you got to Houston and you eventually got to Prairie View. So if you do want to, if in explaining that, you fill in some background on professional experiences that led you here, but how did you come to Houston area?
So Charles Williams, which is interesting. So Charles Williams, who was one of the first students to be part of the radio station here, KPVU, he was a neighbor in New Jersey, and he knew of my work, and so that's how we kind of met each other. Now, he was at CBS, and but he also was looking to start his own platform for web series, and I had a web series, and he was ahead of his time. He was thinking, oh, I want to create a platform for web series, and it was very ambitious, and to be doing it on an independent level, it was tough, right? And so I took a gamble with Charles, and that's how we met. And so a couple of years later,
you're in New York at that time?
Yeah, New York. And so Charles was like, hey, I'm in charge of putting together Com Week at my alma mater, Prairie View University, and I would love for you to come, and I would like for you to teach some workshops, teach directing, screenwriting, editing, teach some workshops, and pay you a stipend and take, I'm like, okay. So that's how I got here, and I came, I think it was late March of 2018. So while I was here, that's when the chairperson was like, "Oh, I want you." It was, went well, and I connected with the students and everything. And at that time, I was already making plans to move to New York. I mean, move to LA to get into television directing. And so the chairperson at the time was, she was like, "Oh, I want you to come here and teach." And I'm like, no, I'm moving to LA. Like, "Oh no, you can still do that. You can teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then you can just fly back to LA." I'm like, no. She just says so much stuff, and so I looked at it as, okay, you know what? That's halfway to LA. Let me give it a try. And so that's how I got here. I was like, I'll give it a try.
Now describe for me the culture and the community that you encountered here at Prairie View.
So yeah, it was interesting being, first of all, being a professor. I never thought that I would be a professor. Never thought about that. However, as a filmmaker in New York, I was always a teacher. I will always bring people under me. So as far as like my crew, I would ask, "Hey, what's your aspirations? What are you trying to do?" So a lot of my assistant directors were women, right? I would say the majority of my past assistant directors are directors right now. Just one of them, Akima Timur. This is full circle. Akima Timur just won a directing award at ABFF just last week. The week prior, I worked on set with her here in Houston. They were directing a sizzle reel for a TV show. And so they were like, "Hey, we would love to have you on set, Tony." I'm like, "All right, I'll help you out." So I did behind the scenes and pictures. And so while we were on set, she gave me a shout out, and she's like, "Everything I learned from this guy." And that was like very humbling to me, because you never know who's watching you. And so I've always, would empower people and put them in positions so they can learn. And then I would teach workshops and things like that. So coming here, I had that same mentality, but also being a professor has made me be a better filmmaker because I had to go back to the basics. I had to be on top of things. So I'm constantly learning and learning new things. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm on top of this. So it's just like, man, my craft has gotten better, And then being on campus and being around, young minds and stuff. So it's like you got some minds who are hungry and they want to feed me. And then you got other minds, it's like, oh man, I gotta get some jumper cables and start this, start these minds up because, it's just like knock, what's going on in there? So it's, you got, two sides of the coins going on here. Mm-hmm. So it keeps you going, and then you're figuring out, okay, how can I make this better? How can I do this? So how can I grow this? So I consider myself progressive. I'm a visionary, and I'm always challenging myself, and I'm it keeps me going, and I want to be the best. Now, granted, I can be a taskmaster. I can I could be challenging sometimes, and I do find that sometimes I may want it more than the students, and it shouldn't be like that, you know. So sometimes I have to scale it back, but it's I have to monitor myself because I can't want it more than you. I have to find ways of, hey, you know what? It's here. I'm going to try to inspire you. I'm going to try to motivate you, but I can't do it for you.
Can you describe a specific moment where that kind of mentorship and teaching came to fruition and how it felt to see that transformation?
Let's see. I remember. You know what? I'll say this recently. This is one of the things this past semester that I would say touched me the most. Okay. So in my multimedia audio production and design class, so it was advanced audio class, and in that class we have a digital story. We had a podcast pilot. They had to do a commercial. They had to do they had to do a movie trailer, and they had to do just a number of assignments. And so I had one student who came at the end of the class, came to my office, and she told me, she said, I want to tell you that this semester was one of the toughest semesters that I've had. So her grandfather had passed 2 weeks after my mother, and she said that she was struggling, and that a lot of professors, they weren't understanding, they didn't give her any grace. And she said that this class allowed her to find a way to express herself and to let out some of her pain, to transfer that into some creativity, find her voice, but also realize that this is the industry that she wanted to be in. And she thanked me. And she said, because of my guidance and everything like that, and she said that she was in another class of mine. I was like, wait a minute, you were? And she said, yeah, but it was only for one day. And I said, wait, what? And she said, yeah, but I dropped it. And I said, wait a minute, well, why did you drop it? And she said, because I said something in the beginning of the class that intimidated her, and other people, there were people who told her, don't take my class because he's too hard, he's too demanding. And she said, I regret that because I think about all the stuff that I could have learned from you. And I remember coming to you when I rented the camera equipment, and you sat with me and showed me how to use the equipment, like for an hour, and you didn't even have to do that. And so I just wanted to thank you. And when I tell you that I needed that, because at that moment, I was feeling like none of the students appreciated anything that I was doing. Like, seriously, I felt like, why am I here? Why am I even doing this? Like, seriously, I was just like, is it time? Like, am I going to make it? And then she comes in and says that. And sometimes all it takes is just one student to say something like that, and then it's like, you know what? That's it. If I can get 1, 2, 3 of those students a semester, it makes it worth it.
Hmm. What was the state of the KPVU studios you encountered, and what do you do to make sure it stays cutting edge?
Well, Dr. Dalvez, she had the Title III grant, and it did not look like this.
What was it like?
I mean, it was so like, it was like really old fashioned. So old fashioned, I can't even remember. And she had this design in the green room design. And so she brought it up to date. And so now she's the chair, and I've taken over. And so one of the things that, what my goal is, number one, and it goes beyond the technical stuff, right? Because people get caught up in the technical. Well, what's important to me are the skills of the students, right? So what I'm going to be focusing on coming in this fall are the basics that they're going to need. Like, I'm going to NABJ in 4 weeks in Cleveland, and I've registered for these master classes. I think with ABC, MSNBC, also with I think CNN, and then another one, and just going to be learning about just updated ways of how TV studios are run and what's the future. I'm just going to be taking it all in and bringing it back, putting it into my curriculum, and basically just making sure that the students have the foundation of how to do proper MMJs, how to speak, the right way in front of the camera. We're going to dress codes, and I want them to pay attention to the details. I want them to be hungry. I want them to go out and get stories. And it's not just doing stuff for TikTok and Instagram and just online stuff. Like, I want them to be professional, right? And to really think like, what is it? Complicating the narrative, solutions journalism. Like, I'm pouring all of that into the television studio, right? We're adding video podcasting into the television studio. Last year we weren't live. We're going back to being live, okay? And so we're going to be doing what people might think, well, shouldn't you be doing those things anyway? But those, again, it's the basics, right? And so the other thing is bringing in more guest speakers and trainers who are in the industry, doing more of that, like local news people. We had what is it KPR KPR K? They were here last semester. Oh my God, they loved it, and they're like, "Can we come back?" And so it's just things like that 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 we're going to have, and I just want the students to be around more professionals and to be thinking that this is professional, and it's a difference. And I just want them to be more aware of that, and to we can have fun, but this is a business. We're getting you ready for your career.
And where do you see the power and the influence of the HBCU media that you're creating out in the world? Where do you see it outside of this campus?
Well, that's the thing. That's the other thing. Like we stream on YouTube, all right? I want to get to the point where people outside of this campus are saying, "Hey, have you seen PV's KPVU TV station?" Like they are doing it. Like that is looking like, and how people look. That looks like a real TV station. When you hear people talk like that looks like a real, when they say that, because they know that it's a campus, it's a student. When they say that looks like a real TV station, that's what I want to hear.
How does that feel when you hear that?
That means we're doing something right. And for the third year in a row, we covered the Chevron LPGA tournament, and we had live broadcasts and pre-recorded content, and we did that with majority freshmen and sophomores who haven't even taken TV studio productions and digital video productions yet. And so, there were, some growing pains, but to know that we pulled that off and they haven't had that training yet, just lets me know that, we're going in the right direction.
How do you cultivate an audience?
An audience outside of...
or on campus as well? Is there a particular strategy that you follow?
So that's the other thing, and this is what I'm trying to get the students to understand. Branding and marketing is so important. All right. Now you see that I have this shirt on. People walk around. Our students, all the students. We got like 30 students with these shirts. All right. Some of the things that we're going to be doing is there'll be days where we'll do a broadcast outside, okay, in front of the MSC. So Panther Sports Zone. All right. Hey, you know what? We're going to be outside. We're going to be outside, and we're going to do this broadcast in front of the Baby Dome. All right. There's a game going on inside, and we're gonna have our live broadcast outside. Exposure, and so people can see like, oh wow, what's going on there? Oh, Panther Sports Zone. There's students who are like, oh, I kid you not. Oh, we have a television studio. We have a studio. We have a station. Oh, we can watch this on YouTube. And that's what we have to see that. We have to have more people talking about that. And the other thing is, I want to have a live studio on certain shows, especially shows like Zone 4, when we have live performance. So if we have, different artists on campus, we have so many talented students. So if we bring in a student to do some music in the studio. All right, so we're going to have a live audience. It's going to be live. So we're streaming live and we got an audience live. That's what I want to do. Build a community to the point where students are striving. Oh, we got it. We have to get on zone 4. We have to get on zone 4. Because it's exposure. So that's what I want.
Just a couple more, and I'm going to draw us to a close here. Respect your time. What are you going to tell that young kid growing up in Chicago who's resilient, who's developing strength, fight or flight, self-empowerment? What would you tell that young man today based on what you've learned after getting to this point here?
What would I tell my younger self?
Mm-hmm.
What would I tell my younger self? I would probably tell my younger self that don't worry. When it looks like it's dark, it's bad, it's going to get better. Keep fighting, keep working hard, never give up, and just love on your family as much as you can, as long as you can, because family's everything.
And it's we're the HBCU Radio Preservation Project. We have a specific purpose here in documenting the history of HBCU radio. We're here at Prairie View at KPVU Studios. It's radio and TV, as you're explaining. But why does this kind of work matter? This preservation work that we're doing. Why do you think that matters?
Documenting stories in history, it matters because as we see today, and I'm not trying to get all political or anything, but and we look in history, when people come into power with agendas, they will try to erase a history. They'll try to change it. Well, you can't necessarily do that when things are documented, right? When it's written down, when you have when it's recorded, when you have pictures, that documentation is important because you can try to erase it as much as you want, but it's there, and so having that record is definitely important, and we see that throughout history when you had the storytellers, when you have people who pass their history down to the next generation. They'll tell the story so that history isn't lost. They do that for a reason, because it's important to have that knowledge, because you don't want it to be lost. Because once it's lost, it's gone. Then what? And so it's important. And I look, when I mentioned before that I got 12 hours of my mother talking about her life. Well, her great grandson, he's 6, so he only knew her up to a certain point. So now he'll be able to listen to her. Like once I have it all put together, with historical sound bites and and music and stuff, and he can travel, listen to her story, and almost like listening to a movie of her life, to get to know his great grandmother, and then all my other family members will be able to have that. They'll get to have that.
Yeah.
That's important.
And you've been doing your own preservation work here on campus. What have you learned about that experience of interviewing people here who have experienced the living history of Prairie View A&M?
It's amazing. It's amazing having talked to so many different people and who work in different departments, whether they're faculty or staff, and that they've, their paths have crossed, time-wise, but then also have different perspectives. And then in those different perspectives, paint this picture where it's almost like looking at this history in like 3D, because you have them tell the story where you have people watching it from they're watching this event standing in different places. And when you're listening to it, it's like, okay, you see it, and it's like this 3D picture forming, and then it's almost like you kind of like start filling it in, what's missing, and your imagination, takes off. So that's been like the beautiful part. And then you with every university you have good and you have the bad, and to listen to how some people are very comfortable in sharing some of the bad history. It's like, okay, all right, so you're sharing where the bodies are buried. Now, keep in mind those folks are retired, but it's just been amazing. So I'm really looking forward to tackling that, and I hope that the PV family appreciates what I'll be presenting in the near future.
That's great. You've been very generous with your time, and obviously we can't get to everything in a person's life and every facet of working here at Prairie View A&M, but is there anything that we've left out that you want to get on record in this last moment here before this interview concludes? People you want to shout out maybe, or
shout out. No, we're I just want to say that we have big plans here with KPVU. My vision is to have KPVU media. Under that will be KPVU FM, PVU No Radio, KPVU TV, the New Panther newspaper, Panther Podcasts. And so under KPV Media, students will be able to just tackle every aspect of media. And the goal is to prepare them for how it's going to be, not tomorrow, but like in the future, so once they leave here, they don't feel like, oh man, like all the stuff that I learned is just outdated, in a year. So I'm trying to get ahead of what's to come, and I'm just trying to be a sponge myself. Dr. Dalvez is doing the same. And I'm excited. I'm excited on what's to come, and we're growing.
And you see the radio station as being a part of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, being the activity director of the grant, I would say in a year when you come back, you're probably not going to recognize that space over there. It's going to be exciting.
Can you say briefly just what that Title III grant work entails when you're overseeing that?
So basically, what we're going to be doing over there is renovating the space. We're going to have a multimedia audio lab, which is going to serve as a classroom for our audio classes. It's going to serve as a news war room. It's going to be a space where students can edit their podcasts and write their stories. But it's soundproof. It'll have a 80-inch monitor. So if a journalist that's in New York or LA wants to teach a class, they'll be right there teaching that class. So it's going to be state of the art, and then our engineering hub space is going to have 3 whisper rooms. And so inside that room, students can do sound mixing of their films, and so when that's not taking place, they can go in and do some sound engineering of their music. So the spaces are always being used. So whether it's music engineering, sound engineering, something is going on in there. And then so when they want to watch the work, there'll be a big screen in there, another 80-inch screen, soundproof space. So now they can watch the film with the surround sound and see, okay, how does this thing sound? And then the other room will be the podcast room. So that'll be a video podcast room in there as well. And so the goal is to basically have students creating this content that is going to go on KPVU TV, but also PVU No, but KPVU FM as well.
It's a true learning lab.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to come back and see it completed and see your vision realized, in true form. So I really appreciate your time today, Tony, and thank you so much for sharing your story. It's a really valuable contribution to the project.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate this opportunity.